The Art of War and Deception. We talk about those moments at the United Nations. And this is also about the power of art. You know, there is a tapestry that hangs in front of the UN Security Council. It's a replica of Pablo Picasso's famous anti-war painting, Guernica. You know, from the Spanish Civil War, the terrible bombing and the faces of agony on the animals and the humans, a cry against war. So that hangs at the United Nations, the tapestry reproduction of that. And when Colin Powell was there and the other officials pushing for war, they recognized the irony that this anti-war tapestry would be the backdrop of this push for war, and so they covered it with a blue curtain. We talk about that, the art of deception. But you look at that 2-week period, and Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, fair.org, looked at the 4 nightly newscasts for the 2 weeks around Powell's address. The NBC Nightly News, the CBS Evening News, the ABC World News Tonight, and the PBS NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. 4 nightly newscasts for 2 weeks to 393 interviews around war. Guess how many were with anti-war leaders? This is when half the country was opposed to war. 1 and 0 underestimates. 4, way over. 3 of almost 400 interviews with anti-war leaders, when half the country was opposed to war. This is no longer a mainstream media. This is an extreme media beating the drums for war. Someone asked me the other day what I think of the mainstream media. I think it would be a good idea. So that's their coverage of war. You know, Noam Chomsky talks about the media manufacturing consent for war. What about around the issue of healthcare? You know, it is hard for us to realize in this country, we live in a globalized world, yet when it comes to getting information, we are so insulated in the most powerful country on earth, in the country with the most powerful institutions. I think the media are the most powerful institutions on earth, more powerful than any bomb, more powerful than any missile. And there is nothing more powerful than an idea that explodes onto the scene, that shatters your paradigms, that breaks through the box of the TV screen, and having people on television and radio, on the internet, who think outside the box. The only way to shatter people's status quo ideas is to hear someone think, how they go from one conclusion to another. To hear, in fact, not the fringe minority, because that's not what we're talking about when we talk about people who are opposed to war, people who are opposed to torture, people who believe in health care in this country, people who are concerned about who benefits and who is hurt by the economic meltdown. We're not talking about a fringe minority. We're not even talking about the silent majority. We're talking about the silenced majority, silenced by the corporate media, which is why we have to take it back. So let's go from war to healthcare. FAIR did another study. Remember March 5th, President Obama holds his first White House healthcare summit. He invites 120 people, supposedly representing every option, to begin the discussion. Okay, he doesn't invite anyone that represents single payer, and it becomes controversial because John Conyers, the chair of the Congressional Judiciary Committee, asks to come at a Congressional Black Caucus meeting, and he's told no. He's the one who's introduced year after year the resolution for single payer health care. But there's then a threatened protest, so the Obama administration agrees to have him. They still say they'll protest, so they admit one other person to represent single payer. That's 2 of 120. We know that actually Obama's for single payer because we have the video we've played on Democracy Now! Of him saying that over and over again before he became president. But now it's off the table. But I'm actually not talking about the Obama administration's point of view here. I'm talking about the media, because that's where we have the debate and discussion to make decisions about the most important issues of the day. So FAIR looked at, in the week leading up to this White House Healthcare Summit, who was represented in the major networks in that week leading up and the major national newspapers. The major networks, not one voice representing single-payer healthcare. Of the hundreds of stories done, not one voice, only raised when someone slammed it. Now, that is not media serving a democratic society. Because when we get information, it's up to us then to make decisions, and we can disagree. You could support private health care very vociferously, and that is your right. But if we don't know what all of the options are, and that's our role in the media, that's why our profession, journalism, is the only one explicitly protected by the US Constitution. Because we're supposed to be the check and balance on power. And when these networks are not using the airwaves responsibly, because don't forget, those airwaves are not the private property of corporations, right? GE, for example, owns NBC. It still doesn't mean it's their private property. You know, that land is our land. They're simply leasing that land. And if they don't use the property responsibly to really have a robust discussion about these critical issues, they should lose their licenses. So healthcare. In the last column in Breaking the Sound Barrier, we write about healthcare in this country. And before I go to that column, I just wanted to say this is a particularly poignant time for me and my family as we come out here, because I lost my mom on October 5th. She died of cancer, a very brief bout of cancer, at least that she or we, my brothers and I, knew about. She was hiking mountains in New Hampshire till the end of August, and then got a pain in her side. Went to the doctor, he said, nothing doing, don't worry. But I knew when my mother complains, there must be something seriously wrong, and they found 4th stage cancer. We spent the month of September with her in the hospital, and my gosh, did we learn about the condition of healthcare in this country. It is not just about insurance. Fortunately, she had Medicare. And by the way, on that issue of Medicare, when the network honchos say, it's not that we're opposed to your point of view, let's say, on war, it's just that if you can't express it in the standard 8-second soundbite, you're not ready for prime time. Well, actually, it's very easy to express a dissenting point of view on the issue of healthcare in 8 seconds. You know, you can time it with me. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, it's about a second. 3, 4, 5. What can we say in that amount of time? Well, what should we have in this country? What about taking Medicare and just lowering the age of eligibility to when you're born? Now, everyone would understand that. It's not even particularly revolutionary or radical because we know what Medicare is. And you can say it in less than 8 seconds. But it's the politics of this when they're sponsored by the insurance industry and Big Pharma. So there we were at Mount Sinai, the name of the hospital in New York, considered one of the finest in the United States, watching President Obama address a joint session of Congress around healthcare in the hospital cafeteria, and seeing the completely broken, sick healthcare system around us. We basically had to stand at her door, I felt like with shotguns holding a sign that said, "Do no harm." As one doctor after another came in and left, seemed to be moonwalking out before they even came in the door. The lack of communication, the lack of any kind of coordinated system to deal with an individual. Just one example, when she was told she could only have clear liquids, you know, something like chicken broth or juice, but nothing beyond that, to give you a sense of how people are dealt with in this country. The swallow expert came in. She came in with yogurt and crackers. I said, excuse me, the surgeon said she can have only clears, only something that she can drink. They said, no, this has nothing to do with the food she eats. They said, this is only to test her swallowing. And I said, but that food's going to go somewhere. That goes into her body and she's not allowed to have it. And they said, no, we've gotten the approval. We must test the swallow. I said, what about water? Does that ring a bell? She could try swallowing that. This doesn't matter. You're not her doctor. We are. And they had her swallow the blueberry yogurt, which since she hadn't eaten for weeks, she was just shocked that she could enjoy what to her was, you know, the richest ice cream, this lean blueberry yogurt. And of course, she got deathly ill after that. And the surgeon ran in, and because me and my brother seemed to be running her health care entirely, the surgeon said to me, what about clear don't you understand? And I said I did everything but hurl my body in front of the other doctor to prevent them from doing it. But it is true, when you swallow something, it goes into your system. Just remember that. But what my mother taught me, and you know, even rationalizing coming on this trip around this country at this sacred time where my brothers and I, her community, her friends, her family, are mourning this wonderful woman, was to spread the message that my mother and the warmth and the love that she shared with us our whole lives. She was 79 years old. She was such a role model for all of us. Deeply believed in understanding other cultures. I think it's the reason why I went into anthropology and journalism. Listened intently to everyone. Traveled the world.